trapped a bunch of aging role-playing gamers in their homes, forcing them to crawl out of their pen and paper comfort zone and into the online world of virtual tabletops and video calls. So join them as they raise the curtain to share their stories, insights, and love of all things geek. So grab your longsword and your +1 bottle of Viagra and get ready for another episode of Advanced Age Role-Playing Gamers Podcast. That's a lot of syllables for one sentence.
Hello and welcome to the Advanced Age Role-Playing Gamers Podcast. My name is Nathan, and
I'm Matt.
And we are co-hosts today for another installment of Between the GMs. Today we're talking with Sean Roberson from Pinnacle Entertainment Group about the Rifts, Atlantis, and Demon Seas Kickstarter.
So Nathan and I, and a lot of the folks in our the cast in our podcast, we've played a lot of Palladium games, especially back in college, and we've covered Supers, Fantasy, Robotech, Beyond Supernatural, Recon, Nightbane, and of course Rifts. We've also played a lot of Savage Worlds. We've sort of done it in sort of the Indiana Jones setting, which is really good. And
that's awesome. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, it was really good for that sort of high action, big risk taking sort of gameplay. And we had a really good game a couple of years ago. A friend of ours ran doing kind of like a mech warrior. So it was all mechs done in Savage rules. And so we were very excited. And we've also played the first iteration of the Savage Worlds Rifts changeover. So we were really excited when we saw that the Atlantis was coming out. Because I know for me, that's a really, I'm sorry, I was just staring at the book. I've got it on the shelf. It's a really, I know, I brought it out and started reading it since I heard about this. So it's a really great setting. So we're really excited to hear about the Kickstarter.
Thanks. I'm really appreciate you guys reaching out to us online and saying like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? Because I love talking with the true hardcore fans that and you guys you obviously realize that these games are deep enough that you want to have a conversation about it, and that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
So Sean, as a self-proclaimed gamer, you're leading us this update. So, quick question: last time we played Rifts with Savage Worlds, it was using the deluxe edition, not the new adventure set. So, can you tell us a bit about that changeover from deluxe to SWADE, or however you want to call it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll throw in just a little bit of my background so that everybody who's listening kind of knows who I am and how I got involved, right? As well, it's part of this whole transition. So I used to be in, I've done a bunch of different jobs, but I used to be in the United States Air Force as a Chinese analyst. And after I got out, I decided to go back to school. So as I was going to the University of Texas in Dallas for design and production of games, I ran into the Pinnacle folks at some conventions, and Shane and Clint and Jody and all the ETU guys and a whole bunch of other great people really welcomed me and invited me to come to more conventions that they were going to. And so in the end, I long story short, they ended up asking me to write what was at the time going to be the Coalition book. And we thought it was going to be Savage Worlds Deluxe, right? But they were working on 3 new 192-page, so basically 200-page books to expand out North America. So one ended up being called Arcana and Mysticism, deals with the Federation of Magic. A lot of that great stuff. The Skyscape, your really high fantasy kind of part of the Rifts equation. Then there was Blood and Banes, which dealt with the Zytikic invasion, the monstrous bug-like invaders, the vampire kingdoms, and a bunch of other of the necromancers and a bunch of the darker stuff for Rifts in North America. And then the book I was working on ended up being changed from the Coalition book to Empires of Humanity. So, guys that maybe haven't heard about, what's been going on since the Rifts for Savage Worlds for Savage Worlds Deluxe, we've also got a book here where you've got all, a lot of info about Northern Gun, the new Coalition war campaign material, the Sumerian Nation and Archie, and a lot of things like that, as well as the Republicans. But yeah, so we have those 3 books that were in production. And I was heading up one. There was a couple of other writers heading up the other ones, Sean and Robin Bircher. And then Shane was working on this new edition of Savage Worlds, the Adventure Edition. And I think he made the right choice. The decision was made to, instead of bring these books out right at the end of the Savage Worlds Deluxe life cycle, he wanted to bring Rifts for Savage Worlds up to the Adventure Edition. So just to guarantee the longevity of what he was about to publish. Yeah. It's a really tough decision for him because he's not, some publishers do this, but Shane is definitely not one of these people that wants to just put out a new edition to get people to pay him more money for something. And so he was really nervous about, at that point, Rifts for Savage Worlds had come out in Deluxe and it had only been out 3 or 4 years by the time we got to the final Kickstarter and stuff. So he put out a really good deal on the 3 new, almost 200-page books. We did a revised edition of the original 3 books. Instead of just doing here's a cheat sheet, we realized when I got to 60 pages in Microsoft Word, just line by line, this needs a change, we need to update this, put the notes out there for people. And then we went through an intense playtest and feedback period, which was awesome. We have the best fans. And so the Adventure Edition of Rifts for Savage Worlds, sometimes called Second Edition or Revised, it has these 3 new world books for North America. It's got the original Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide, which has the most changes, a Game Master's Guide, where I did go in and add sections about, high-octane horror is what I called it, because, people were, how do I do the horror with Rifts with these really high power level characters? Another big thing I introduced into that book is, in the Game Master's Guide, is an entire table for campaign power levels. So if you want to go from a more low-powered campaign or push it up to, Avengers or, Cosmic Knights type level campaigns, you can. And we give you those explicit, guidelines for how we think that would be best, done for your group. Obviously, Game Masters can do whatever they want. And I also put in a town generator. So it's really, you roll one of all the Savage Worlds dice, right? And pull a card from the action deck, from your poker deck. And it generates a town with all different kinds of crazy stuff going on in it. But besides those updates and those fun added things, we also have what's called the Tomorrow Legion Field Manual. And so that has some new material that I wrote up, some more edges, an extra race, the Vernulians, if anyone remembers those guys. They're lizard, octopi type aliens, as well as took a lot of the adventure material from the deluxe edition and brought it all up to the SWADE, is what we call it, the adventure edition of Savage Worlds. So that's kind of the overview, I guess. During that period, during that playtest and feedback period, going into that, Shane made the decision to have me take over working as the line manager, and now I'm the line editor for Rifts for Savage Worlds. And we have now, the next big thing that we've done is we've got this Atlantis Rising Kickstarter is what we called it. The last one we called it American Armageddon, just to encompass all the different 3 books that were coming in. Okay. So if anyone wants to go check out the Atlantis Rising Kickstarter, you can easily get involved and get a hold of all the new books. We have a lot of stuff available. You just order it from the Pinnacle store as well and get it shipped straight to you while you wait for the Atlantis stuff to be fulfilled. But another thing I'll put out there for anyone that has, and I keep trying to put this out there, if you have an old deluxe version and you don't necessarily want to go buy a new physical book, you can contact info at peginc.com, I think it is. But contact Pinnacle, and they'll once you've, I think they want to know what your SKU was and stuff like that. They'll get you a free upgrade copies of the PDFs. So you can see the new books. Yeah, if you have
really,
book, you can.
Did not know that.
very Pinnacle, Shane and the team. We all really want everyone to be able to enjoy Rifts for Savage Worlds, and we're not trying. Again, the new edition for Adventure Edition was trying to make sure we offered the best gameplay possible to support the full Savage World system. We're not trying to nickel and dime anybody about those original books. So we really appreciate anyone who's backed the original Kickstarter, and please get in contact with us. We'd really like to get you those PDFs and get you rocking and rolling. Maybe you'll buy some new stuff, maybe not, but we really want to make sure that everybody can enjoy the adventure edition of Rifts for Savage Worlds.
That's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So there you go. Now you're glad you did the podcast.
That's right, I know. Okay. Do a podcast, free PDF.
All
right. Well,
I just had to jump in. Sorry, Matt.
No, that's right.
So you know how people talk about the Steam sale for video games?
The Steam summer sale, right?
That's like me with drive-through RPG. I just have 1,000 more RPG PDFs than I'll ever use. So anyway, back to you, Matt.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and so we were going to edit. So, all right, so Nathan, do you still want me to, or do you want me to skip down?
Whatever you feel like doing, just roll with it, man. I
was going to roll with it then. All right, sorry. So I was going to talk to you all about like the military and stuff and our connection, because I've got some connections with you on this. So I was ex-military as well. A long time ago, I was in an Army intelligence unit in Maryland for 6 years. National Guard. No, National Guard up there in Laurel, so near Fort Meade.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly where it is. Yeah, I was. I got stationed out at Fort Meade. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we're nearby, and of course, like once a week or once a month, 2 weeks a year. But a lot of the guys who did what you did in our unit worked full time over at the fort. So that's it. So I was just down, and that was back like, 89, 95. So
okay, yeah. I was out there. Let's see, basically 2000. Wait, make sure I don't lie to you guys. Like 2010 to 2012.
Nice.
Because I spent a lot of time in training.
Yeah. But come on. I know we're digressing. The school is in a really nice location, though, right?
Monterey, California, for 2 years. Really can't complain. It was
cry me a river, man.
Yeah, I lived in Pacific Grove and would go on walks, and there'd be like these hot rod conventions. They'd drive through, slowly driving through Monterey and Pacific Grove on up to. What is that town where Clint Eastwood's the mayor? Oh my gosh. Anyways, you just ride up the road up 7 Mile Drive, right? So, or 17 Mile Drive. I forget what it is. Anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, it was a great experience.
It's awesome. All right, so I'll refocusing us back. So what was it about Rifts that you guys decided, we've got to try to, we've got to savage this, right? And I know because Kevin and his franchise has not really been, this has sort of been his franchise for a very long time. And as far as I know, this is really the first and only really big sort of reimagining of this game world, the sort of setting.
Right. And, so I came in about, I don't know, at this point, more than half, pretty far back, but, at that time, I came in as a writer, which I was excited they gave me that opportunity, right? There was already an original design team that had approached Kevin and gotten his okay, right? And then done a lot of the transition over done the transition over for the deluxe edition. Although with the revised, version that we did, with the updates that we did for the adventure edition, there was a lot there to work with and move forward with. But I have talked with all of them about that process. And so, Kevin, I think Kevin people will think, Kevin doesn't like to work with other people or let them play in his sandbox. And it's not, I don't think that's necessarily as true as people like to think. I do have an interview, 2.5 hour long interview with him on my podcast or my video cast or whatever you want to call it on YouTube. It's called The Roberson Rebellion. And the most recent episode, the one that's 2.5 hours long, is me and Kevin talking. But he does go into detail in this. So I'm just going to throw that out there for anyone who's really interested in that question. But I think in the end, it's really that he has a very particular vision for Rifts. And sometimes if people bring other ideas, maybe they don't fit what his vision is for Rifts. And it's nothing against their ideas. Maybe it's great ideas that could make another great game world or something like that, but it doesn't fit his vision for Rifts. I think the difference is with Pinnacle coming into it is that the Pinnacle team was, dedicated and has all the people are old school fans that were part of that first design team, and they helped me out a lot still. Like Clint Black is awesome, and he not only worked on riffs for Savage Worlds for the deluxe edition, but he also his name is shared with Shane as the credits in Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, right? So he really knows Savage Worlds. He's an old school riffs fan, for instance. They all are. And so that was, I think, the difference for Kevin, was that he knew that they would be dedicated to making something that was, as true to his vision as they could. And then since then, I've kind of doubled down, right? Because I'm a crazy riffs fan. The people who get to know me start to find out how nuts I am about riffs. And for me, it was just formative. I don't know that riffs is crazy or weird. To me, other things are less imaginative, because I grew up in my teenage formative years reading Atlantis, reading, the New West, reading Vampire Kingdoms, right? To me, I don't understand how you don't do something that big and that epic. But I think that's kind of the secret sauce, was just the dedication from both sides of the licensing platform. And then the other thing is that Kevin has also, his faith in the Pinnacle team has also grown a lot, that he's allowed us to do virtual tabletop support. With this new Atlantis Rising Kickstarter, there's two major things that we've got on the Kickstarter. One, we've got the Atlantis and the Demon Seas book that I wrote, but we also, which covers not just Atlantis, but also Lemuria, the New Navy, the Lord of the Deep, the Horum Pirates, a lot of the real big bad guys that you're going to find at sea, around in and around Atlantis as well, or out into the Pacific and the oceans. But it also has a big, what we call an Army of Pawns box. I like to call it a mega pawn set. That's not on the cover of the pawn set. Normally, Pinnacle's been doing pawn sets, and they've been met with rave reviews by the fans, which they're 2 millimeter, thick, not cardboard, but thick cardstock that is then laminated. And these, if you see, there are some other really big companies out there that do pawns similarly. But the difference here is that each one of these has a custom die cut to it. So it actually follows the outline of the art, and we have on most of them, where it's appropriate, we have art on the reverse side as well. So you can tell which direction a pawn is facing on your tabletop. So we're super stoked about that, because this pawn set, normally they do 8 sheets of pawns for over 100 pawns in a set. This one we're doing 12 sheets. So we're including all the core stuff from the original 3 core Rifts for Savage Worlds books, and the Atlantis stuff that we think needs to be hit and covered in this pawn set. So it's a pretty cool offering, and we're pretty excited about that. To have worked with Palladium this closely. In fact, we even have a Palladium fan backer level where you can just get the maps and the combat maps for your tabletop, a poster that includes a map of Atlantis, and the pawn set for just coming straight out the gate. You don't have to worry about getting the other stuff if that's not your bag. So
that's cool.
Nice. So I'm going to jump a little bit because of what you said. So I was going through and looking at the Kickstarter, which we talked, and I saw the different rewards, and I was looking at the pawn sets. And at the very bottom of the page, I noticed something called DIY VTT.
Right.
And so I was very intrigued, because we, of course, with the pandemic, had to move fully remote. And so VTTs have become our bread and butter for gaming. And so I guess I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit. I was intrigued, but that you guys offer a set of tools to help convert, because there's also, you can get these pawns in a digital format as well.
Right.
And so I was wondering
yeah, it can be a little confusing. I can get confused in conversations because it's the same art assets, right, that we're taking and turning into tokens for a virtual tabletop, but the considerations of sizing and stuff are completely different. And so I get like really mixed up until I realize, okay, I have to very clearly differentiate which one I'm talking about. The pawns that you put on your tabletop, as the size category, as the height and size of a monster or characters grow, so does the pawn, right? But the virtual tabletop tokens, they only grow as in Savage Worlds, the scale category increases. So, if you go size 4, 5, 6, 7, but then when you go to 8, that's a new scale category. So then it takes up more, we have it take up more space on your battle map on the virtual tabletop. So it's just a little different. It's more of a jumpy scaling than it is. But yes, so these assets, the do-it-yourself virtual tabletop is out there for anybody that wants to take this stuff and they don't mind getting in the guts a little bit and putting it together in their whatever their favorite virtual tabletop is, right? But all the art and stuff is very prepped for you, so it should be very easy to do. The tokens are prepped, right? It's just up to you then to put it into your favorite virtual tabletop. At the same time, there's multiple virtual tabletops out there. This isn't my forte, so if I make a mistake while I'm saying this, I think I've got it right. But just buyer beware, caveat emptor. But for the virtual tabletops, so Fantasy Grounds does their own support. They already have the Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide in Fantasy Grounds, and they are working on the future of that, right? And so we're very happy with that. It's a very hands off. They take care of that themselves. When it comes to other popular ones like Roll20 or Foundry, there's other ones that our virtual tabletop team is also working on supporting. Those, Pinnacle has its own in-house virtual tabletop team that works on those. And so that, just so that everyone knows, though they are working on it is in early stages of production for Rifts for Savage Worlds support for Foundry, Virtual Tabletop, and Roll20. First, they've hit Deadlands and Savage Worlds, the core rules, then Deadlands, right? And they're also doing a lot of work on the Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. And so one of the things about Rifts is crazy. As anyone who's played it especially in the Savage Worlds, it touches all the rules. It touches the sci-fi campaign, it touches fantasy, it touches horror, it touches superheroes, right? So one of the things that I told the design, the head of the design team, I said, look, just take your time. I want it done right. The fans want it done right. I know people are going to squawk about, hey, I really want this now. And I do too. Trust me, because I'm trying to play Rifts every week, right, with a virtual tabletop. And it works. It works. And you can do that with, I've played Rifts on Roll20. I've played it on Foundry. I've played other games on Fantasy Grounds. They're all great, right? But I can't wait for this module either. But I do want to make sure that they take the time to get it done right so that we can all have the most optimal experience playing Rifts for Savage Worlds on the virtual tabletop of our preference.
Awesome. Thanks.
That's good. So I have a kind of side personal question. So for people like me who've got into 3D printing and whatnot, has Pinnacle thought about licensing out some of the products to be made into STLs or 3D files?
So one of the things about that is that, these rights all originate with Palladium. So that would be more of Palladium's decision, right? And I think that Kevin, if you go back to that interview that I talked about with Kevin, I mean, he'd love to see lots of great miniatures out there, but he's focused on, it's Palladium books, right? He's focused on primarily producing book materials. That's why, and actually they don't have any plans. I have another interview where he's talked about this just like a few days ago, but they don't have any plans at Palladium Books. Kevin doesn't have any plans to do miniatures or anything like that anytime soon. And so he's very happy, for Pinnacle to be able to do this. And he's, Kevin is trying to share this with the Palladium fans as well, right? So that they can enjoy these assets as well. So I don't know if we're going to look at it doing anything like that or putting out STL files for people. There is a group on Facebook that does do that as kind of like homebrew type stuff where people will talk and share files, and people do some really great stuff. I mean, I'm like blown away. That's the thing about Rifts fans is they're fans. Like, it's not like, if you get somebody that's a Rifts fan, a lot of times it's like very, very strong, right? Even if they're a busy dad who hasn't gotten to play a game in 15 years, right? No, seriously, I meet these guys, but you can tell true fans, right? And so I would just put out there that, you can go check it out on on Facebook. We have the Rifts for Savage Worlds. It's the Savage Rifts Facebook group. It's not an official one, right? But I'm there all the time. A lot of the fans are there, and if if you can't find this through the search function, the fans there can definitely point you at the Facebook group where they talk about miniatures, conversions, STL files, all that kind of stuff, just to kind of do it yourself at home to have fun with it. But yeah, I'm hoping that there is a big pent up demand. I'm hoping that these pawns will help with that. We're trying. I think they're going to be pretty revolutionary for a lot of people.
Yeah, it helps to visualize. If if you're facing up a Splugoth, you want to see it there on the table. So
right, that's a lot.
Right.
That's a lot of material to print.
It is, and in fact, we've actually, a lot of people may or may not realize this. We have a lot of art that's great for the books that fits, but we actually, I had to go through and do a new order of a bunch of art to supplement what we already had, and we're ordering all this back art for the backs of the characters. So we're going to have a coalition squad with 3 riflemen with like the old school, right? Like the C-12 laser rifles. There's a heavy gunner with the C-20, the C-27 plasma cannon. There's a squad leader, right? And then you've got 5 old style Skelelots. I think we're going to have some of this. We're still trying to figure out exactly how to fit it on the sheets, but we should have 3 to 5 dog boys available.
Nice.
I think it's going to be 5 with a Psy Stalker probably. But you're going to have a Psy Stalker with his dog boy pack. You're going to have, a squad of Zytikic warriors, a squad of wild vampires, just a whole bunch of these things that that you're going to need. We have stuff in there so you can use people for militia or mercenaries or commandos that the players might be facing down. A whole bunch of individual pawns for characters, iconic characters like your Burster or your Glitter Boy or whatever, so that you could use those for players or for NPCs that they run into, as well as you're going to have a coalition enforcer, sky cycles, so power armor, robot vehicles, all the stuff that I think that you really need, that's really quintessential Rifts, like the Samson power armor, right? Like, we're trying to make sure we can get all that in this set. And we do actually have a lot of fans, because you're getting, like, say, a squad of 5. We have quite a few people that have said they're buying 2 to 4 sets of the pawns.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was surprised by that, but I'm stoked. I can't wait to see those kind of battles, because I've played some really massive battles on virtual tabletops and at conventions for different games with Savage Worlds, but especially for Rifts for Savage Worlds. And it's awesome. I mean, when you can play a battle with like 40, 50 people on the bad guys on one side, and the good guys and their allies, and you can blast through it in 2 hours, and it's like this cinematic experience. Yeah, sign me up. It's a lot of fun. Savage Worlds does that in spades, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think that. So from when we were playing Savage Worlds, the conversion, I think, works so well for the Rifts players, because Rifts itself is kind of over the top, right? I mean, we're talking about a game system where you could have technically a party that has a colonist and a Cosmo Knight in the same party, right? It's all valid, right? So I kind of and a lot of these, you took Glitter Boys, right? And some of these, like, super, mega juicers, right? These are over the top characters, and I think that the Savage conversions really captured that and allowed for those, and it's right off the bat. It didn't seem like, oh, you'll be that cool when you're at 10th level. No, you're going to be that cool right out of the box. And I think that was a good, I think that's why a lot of people have really, at least for us, that's why I really enjoyed it. It felt that kind of wild, over the top gameplay that you want to have. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. I will take that feedback back to the team.
But that's at least there's my experience. I thought it captured that sort of really sort of like, I don't know, very interesting characters, a lot of cool powers. And you said it touches magic, technology, psionics, the whole thing's in there. So, all right,
so
let's see.
So what brought you, how'd you start into your own personal Rifts journey? Like, what brought you to the game?
Yeah, it's interesting. So kind of like, what Matt was just talking about. So I'll share with everybody now. I encountered role playing in like middle school. My buddies had the big red box for Dungeons and Dragons. We were literally playing it in gym class when, I don't know if there's storms or something, we didn't have anything to do. And we were just sitting in a line, and my buddy had snuck in his D20 and the little pamphlet, and we were sitting there playing. And everybody's dying because they have 2 hit points. But then I got really, when I say I got into BattleTech, I was like 16. I was going to conventions with my buddies, and we were like entering lance mech competitions to kick the crap out of each other and try and defeat other lances in these tournaments. So I got really competitively into that. I really enjoyed BattleTech. So you guys mentioned that earlier. I love BattleTech. I love some mech action. When it came to, and we played like West End Star Wars and some stuff like that. But when it came to the first game that I owned, I was a big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. So, and when I saw the cover, I was like, okay, this is true to the comics, which I was a big fan of. And so I got into that. I started playing that. Then we were like, well, I want to get this Ninjas and Super Spies book because I want to mix all the martial arts into TMNT, right? I mean, and the similarity, it's almost like just as this, between a generation apart, right? Like what Pinnacle does with Savage Worlds, I think is something that Palladium was already doing, 20 years before or whatever. But Kevin, he was just, this is the new product, but it all fit into this, rule system that was meant to be played the same way across all his games, right? So kind of the same idea, but there's no like core Palladium book, right? And then I got into Heroes Unlimited because I was like, wait, Ninja and Super Spies is referencing Heroes Unlimited and the different, super soldiers and, they have their own martial artist thing in there. And so I checked that out and we started playing with that as well and having fun with that. And then a lot of my friends are way more into comics than I was. I like comics, but some of my friends were like, we gotta do supers, and then, so I was playing all those games, and then I started seeing the advertisements for Rifts, and I saw that the first thing I remember seeing was that Coalition Mark V APC with a dead boy standing in front of it. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I want it. I want it really bad. And then I saw that image, again, another Kevin Long piece of the Triax Dynabat smashing another bot. And the like, gears and stuff are popping out of its head. And I was like, oh, like, what is this? So when Rifts came, it was so funny. I was waiting for it. And we, back then there were no interwebs. So, the series of vacuum tubes hadn't been connected yet. And so I had to go to my friendly local game store, which was actually like, 45 minutes away from my house in Houston. I went to Nan's Games and Comics and I go in and they didn't have it because it had sold out. I mean, Kevin was blown away, so I got a third printing, but it was like in the first year, right? They were just having to put all these new print runs together because the game just exploded. It was huge. And so that's how I got into it. A lot of people, they ran into that iconic cover art and were like, had to pick it up, right? It like forced you to pick it up. But I was there. It didn't matter what had been on the cover. I wanted to get in and find out what these robots and coalition soldiers were doing. But the thing that I really stayed for, and here I am 30 years later, and I get to write with it, and I get to play in that sandbox with Kevin. And it's really exciting for him to he's very collaborative when we talk about updates to the lore and stuff like that, because sometimes with the Risk for Savage World stuff, it's all set in 109 PA. We're trying to fill in the cracks. Maybe something hasn't been written about in the game setting since what happened in 105 PA or 102 PA. And so that's been really fun. But yeah, the story where you take the psionics, you take the magic, you take the demons and monsters and rifts and high technology and cybernetics, and then you say, it's not just a kitchen sink where we threw everything in this box and you get to just, build whatever you want with the Tinker Toys. It's very different because there's a believable world behind it. And I think that's what people are still wanting to play Rifts for, is because 30 years later, some people have been in it that long, some people are new, but you get this feeling that there is just something that's very real underneath that brings it all together in a cohesive way. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed working on this new Atlantis and the Demon Seas book, is even though some of the books were written decades apart, like Lemuria or Underseas or Atlantis or really Atlantis 2, the Splendid Dimensional Market book, there's actually connections between all of them. So when you open up, Rifts fans old or new, open up Atlantis and the Demon Seas, they're going to see how really it's great to have these all presented together. I hope, and I think, and that's a lot of the feedback I've gotten though. I'm a little biased, but but it's great to see all this connected together, because it really is a cohesive narrative across the world, not just individual sections of the planet.
So that's what I was wondering. So that's actually good. So the content for this is going to actually be about 3 to 4 of the traditional books, right? Because I was going to ask, was there going to be content from like the Splend Market? And then when you start talking about that, there's the Navy, that's from, and then Undersea. So this is about what, four original source books.
So yeah, we very unabashedly, right? Our intent with Rifts for Savage Worlds and these world books is not to replace the original Palladium content. We actually directly refer players back to that, because I love it when someone's like, "Oh, I really like Juicers." Wait, there's a Juicer Uprising book, right? And they can go read about all this lore for their character, right? And then game masters are like, "Wait, there's how many books? I need to catch up," right? But I say go hit the stuff that's exciting for you. So I've got the manuscript here pulled up. I write straight into layout. So it's Rifts Ultimate Edition, Rifts Aftermath, Rifts Sourcebook 4 Coalition Navy, Rifts Mercenaries, Rifts Worldbook 2 Atlantis, Rifts Worldbook 7 Underseas, Rifts Worldbook 21 Splendid Dimensional Market, and Rifts Worldbook 32 Lemuria are the ones that I primarily referenced, and I would say are very heavily referenced in this, because all of them have some piece of the puzzle that's in this book.
That's cool. Well, that's kind of nice, because it's new material, right? A whole new game system, but at the same time, you're still bringing people in to go and say, "Hey, go check out this library of these original Palladium books," and where you can find all kinds of like story, all kinds of content,
NPCs, right?
Right, settings, right? Yeah, no, I think that's really cool, because that ties it to sort of its historical roots.
Right. And that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about working with Kevin on it, is when I came to him and I said, "Hey, we have Rifts Mercenaries book that has Ironheart armaments," right? And that gives the players, as mercenary companies with a lot of original Rifts campaigns, the warships and the different vehicles they need to do a seafaring adventure. I said, but Ironheart armaments, they were seized by the Coalition, right? And there was the Ironheart Avengers, which was a pirate group that was trying to bring back the company. So in this book, we actually have an update in 109 PA. There's their successors. It's Avenger armaments. So you can go and you can buy the old Ironheart armaments production stuff along with a lot of new stuff that is, knockoffs, well, not knockoffs, but production authorized by the new Navy for certain body armors and boats and stuff, or Tritonia. And so that gives the players a way to kind of navigate through the world, and it updates the story in a way. And Kevin's taking notes. Kevin's like, "Okay, great, this is Rifts. So Avenger armaments, their core production facilities are in Hughestown. Cool. Next time that's important, I'm going to put it in a Palladium Rifts book." So that's really cool too.
Nice.
So I was, I guess we were wondering. So you've tackled Rifts Earth very, very well. Are you looking at further supplements in the future, like 3 Galaxies, Phase World, that kind of area?
I paid him back that question.
Yeah. You and everybody else, man. No, because I think you're right. What's Rifts without dimensional portals that lead you to some crazy place in time? And that's a really good question. Originally when the Pinnacle did all this and contracted, with Kevin, the current contract is for Rifts Earth, right? Because those other things are all considered separate IPs. They're all separate intellectual properties. I mean, you could make a whole bunch of Phase World movies, right? Or 3 Galaxies movies. I think that Wormwood could easily be its own movie or trilogy, right? So I think that there's something really special there. One of the things that Kevin has become very confident with working with us, and again, I can refer you back to that interview that I did with him, but he's very open to the idea of other things. So that's a bit above my pay grade to say, yes, that definitely could happen, or definitely couldn't, but I don't want to do that because, that really in the end would be a contractual agreement between like Shane Hensley, the president of and founder of Pinnacle Entertainment, and Kevin Siembieda, right, the founder and owner of Palladium Books. But I will say that things like that are definitely on the table. As a line editor, as the product line, guy trying to figure that out, I would say that that things like that would be really exciting to be able to do. And I would love to do them. One of the big things that I'd like to do, we really want to cover Earth, right? Like the current book Atlantis was, we're not done with North America, but we felt like we hit all the high points for North America with the 3 192 page world books that I mentioned earlier, right? I feel like Atlantis and the Demon Seas, this really covers, it doesn't cover everything. We could do a lot with it, right? But it's going to cover all the hardcore stuff you need to cover Atlantis, all the major factions and the different, servitor races and thrall races and stuff like that, as well as, the high seas and underseas content that you're going to need. Whether it's the good guys like the New Navy or the bad guys like the Huron Pirates, the Not Yule, right? All this different stuff, the Milu. Then when the next book, we have officially announced it. I already have a team working with me to create the South America book. So it's in Rifts, it's called The Land of a Thousand Islands. So I try and make sure that the names don't sound exactly the same between the Palladium and the Savage World stuff. So we'll probably call it The Land of a Thousand Islands. And again, that's what it's called in universe. After that, no promises, but I really want to hit Europe. That's some great content there.
Broodkill.
And then, yeah. And, I love King Arthur and like all the England stuff, all the Triax stuff. I love all of it. And there's some really cool stuff there. And then I was a Chinese analyst. I lived overseas in Taiwan for a couple of years. I have a degree in Chinese culture and history and language and stuff. So for me, I'd really like to have a hand in, our depiction of Asia or East Asia, however that would look and what it would be called. I don't know exactly, but, cover the China books and probably Japan, and, maybe Australia while we're at it, right? Because again, we're not trying to, we're not remaking. I have no interest, right? And right now you can order or immediately download from, Drive-Thru-RPG or go at your local friendly bookstore and get Rift's World Book 2 Atlantis. I don't want to rewrite that. It's great, right? So Atlantis and the Demon Seas is more, right? It's tying all this stuff together, bringing it to Savage Worlds for fans of Savage Worlds. Sometimes Palladium fans will enjoy some of the mechanics, like the Juicer's Burn mechanic, and they'll bring it over into Palladium. That's great. Do it, right? I hope that there's some cool stuff that you'll find in here and you're like, I kind of like that idea. I'm going to bring that in for the Tattooed Warrior or something like that. But also we have a ton of adventure material. So the way that I structured the adventures, I hope that when you get to this section of the book, that this adventure would help introduce your players to this part of the world. And then a game master can take it and run with it. Or the plot point campaign is you get involved with a slave uprising against the Slugorth. And so is it easy? Is it fun? No. This isn't like, yay, the Tomorrow Legion Boy Scouts are here to save the world. It's a lot darker than that. But at the end of the day, if that's where the heroes should be, is fighting oppression, even if it means that it's going to end their life, or even, other things that aren't quite as bad. But, I think that speaking out for what's right, doing what's right, that's really important. And so, sometimes that comes at a cost, and I think that is reflected in this book. I don't pull any punches about the despicable nature of Atlantean society. And when I say Atlantean, I mean Slugorth society. But we also have the true Atlanteans in here. We've got the Lemurians. We've got the New Navy, the Sea Titans, right? We've got the Sea Inquisitors. So you also have where you have all this darkness. That's the thing I love about Rifts. You've got this chthonic horror, really dark stuff, right? And then at the same time, Rifts gives the good guys a chance to shoot back. It's kind of like Aliens, right? Where you've got the aliens, a whole bunch of them, and then you've got the Marines. And sure, the Marines are going to get jacked. But at the end of the day, the good guys still have a chance to win. right? And that's for me, that's Rifts. Even if it's just kicking Cthulhu back out of our dimension for another 1,000 years. To Cthulhu, it's like minor inconvenience. To humanity, it's like, yes, we get to live another day.
Yeah, so I can tell you that there would definitely be a demand, at least from this gamer, for a 3 galaxies sort of conversion, right? Because it's like,
I'd love it.
Again, you just open that spectrum of as detailed as one world can be, why not have 1,000 worlds? So right, it's sort of the endless possibility. But having that architecture, I think for myself, that would be awesome to have that architecture to take that and move into that. And as far as like breaching out to like Europe. Like I really enjoyed sort of like the Russia book, right? Sort of these like there is such untapped potential. As detailed as North America is, moving that kind of concept over to somewhere like China and Japan or Russia, they've got their own lore, their own stories, their own, right. And you could weave just as deep a following and from players and story in those regions of the world. So I think that's really cool.
I agree. That's why I love Rifts, right? As a fan, I've always loved Rifts and will always love Rifts. And I love telling stories in it because it doesn't pull its punches. Good guys are good guys, bad guys are bad. And it's great when you can defeat them. That's I definitely agree with you. Each of these books that we come out with, I think that people could play entire campaigns in Atlantis, entire campaigns in South America, entire campaigns in the New West. And I hope that we're bringing you, the game masters, the material they need in combination with the original Palladium books, which are still in print. I mean, it's currently being developed. New supplements for Rifts are being released by Palladium Books, right? So again, this is all meant to dovetail, and kind of like people like that old Rifts Aftermath book because it caught everybody up to 109 PA. That's kind of the idea with the Rifts for Savage Worlds books, is that all of them, when you get this, it's kind of going to form a snapshot of the world circa 109 PA. So you can kind of see where everything is hopefully when we get done, right? You'll see where everything is, and it's a nice cohesive whole brought up to that one level. Before you move on or do something different with your campaign, right? I mean, that's the other thing about Rifts is it's your campaign. I've heard about people doing a steampunk coalition. Cool, man. That sounds fun, right? Like, where do I sign up to join in on that campaign, right? So I want to see your write-ups. But there's a lot of really deep material here that we can do for years and years to come. One of the great things about Savage Worlds is we do have the companion books. And if you want to get going as soon as possible, one of the things I will suggest, or for any Rifts fan of Rifts for Savage Worlds, there is the vehicle guide. And one of I wrote that. But it was from the lessons learned about, okay, how do we make sure that there's this nice, clean transition, right, between infantry to tanks to dragons and starships and battleships, right? So that is a mathematical love letter to that expression, I guess you could say, where you can take these, and it's not like the science fiction campaign where you have build rules. It's where you're able to go and you're going to say, okay, this is what the stats for a battleship of this size would be, or a cruiser, or a futuristic airplane, or an ancient wooden wagon, right? I mean, you can use it for all this kind of stuff, and then just kind of attach guns and sensor systems as needed. And at the back of the pamphlet, or I don't know what to call it, like PDF, right? The supplement, we give you a lot of examples on how to do that. How to create, your Doomstar that could blow up a planet, or how to do, this or that, your galactic exploration vessel with an intrepid crew. But in addition to that, so I'd say if you really want to dig into stuff like that, and just as any Rifts game master, because I had my guys, we rolled randomly for a Rift, and they randomly showed up in an alternate timeline of the 1800s where Cthulhu was fighting the French in Louisiana. It was just nuts, right? And we had a blast. But something like this could help you be like, okay, well, how do I, if Napoleon made an armored wagon, what would that look like, right? But you can get that. The other thing is that the sci-fi companion, the fantasy companion, the horror companion, right? The companions are really important. If you want to do the 3 galaxies and Phase World, I would say pick up the sci-fi companion. Now, the companions are all in development, right? We don't have any specific release dates for any of those, although I think they did announce that The Super's Companion was the next one coming to Kickstarter, but I could be wrong. Don't cut my hands off or hate me if I got that one wrong, because I'm kind of like head down in the Rifts Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But I will say that I have, been there to help give sanity tests and or maybe be more involved with some things to make sure that it is all compatible, right? That Rifts for Savage Worlds is Savage Worlds, and all the stuff should work very well and play well together. Although I would say if you're going to throw monsters at your heroes, just that level of gear that a lot of Rifts players, like you said, they out the gate, you're a glitter boy. Out the gate, you're a cyber knight. Out the gate, you're a juicer, right? Usually in Savage Worlds, players don't walk out with anti-tank weaponry, right, just out the gate. But Rifts does, so you have to keep that consideration in mind. If you're, say, taking something like Deadlands, the last, or the last Parsec, and bringing it into Rifts. One of the great things that you might like is in the new Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide update. In the revised edition, I have an entire section, like a whole sidebar, about how to take characters from other Savage Worlds properties and bring them into Rifts for Savage Worlds so that they can, stand there and stand up and adventure with Rifts level heroes. So that is in there too.
Yeah, make it right.
So
all right, well, go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, so I was going to say, coming up on the hour here, I just want to say that we've been following this Kickstarter. And how many days do you have left?
Let me look. We've got, we have 7 days to go, so we're about halfway through right now.
And you've got tons of support. Around 1,300 backers now. So people are really
we're almost
falling
to 1,300.
behind this. That's amazing.
It's been great. Yeah.
Are there any stretch goals that are still out there for people to meet?
So we're calling this a booster campaign. It's a little different. We don't have stretch goals. Okay. With this one, we had a lot of stuff that we wanted to release and get to the fans. So we just kind of did that. So I think if you take a look at it, really you could say, oh, well, they could offer this as a stretch goal or that as a stretch goal. Well, we just put it all out there. And I know that that's not quite as exciting, but for me at least, that helps keep me a little more sane. We do have some other thing. We've been doing a lot of different, I've been doing interviews. We've been releasing free adventure material. We have a live actual play that's going to be happening on tomorrow, on Wednesday evening. So we're going to be putting stuff out about that. And there's something else that is exciting that I don't have the official release for it yet, but some people might look at it as, people would be like, oh, that's stretch goal worthy, right? That we're going to announce that we're like, hey, there's this one little thing that we want to add to this that we think people will be really excited about. But just for our sanity and for the pace of the Kickstarter, we decided to go the booster route. And so far, it doesn't seem like it's hurting anything because people are really excited. We've got lots of backers. It's a very small, compared to like offering, 3 new 200-page books or, a set including like, the revised version of the 3 new books, the Tomorrow Legion field manual with, stuff brought up to SWADE, that's like 1,000 pages of material. And yet this is still going really well. We really appreciate everyone's that's backing it. We added this Palladium fan level, but I noticed a lot of Palladium fans are just going if you're the full Monty is called the True Atlantean. So we've got a lot of people that are just going, well, I just went and did the True Atlantean. And I'm like, well, thanks. Because, awesome. The word's kind of starting to get out that, in the way that we write adventure material for Savage Worlds, for Rifts for Savage Worlds is, do a chase scene here. What does that mean? Do a few skill checks, right? That's exciting. You defuse a bomb. Well, Palladium players know how to do that. We don't need to tell them how to do that. Or, hey, they face, 3 wild vampires or 2 Samus, coalition Samus pilots, right? You can just go reference the Palladium books instead of the Savage Worlds books. The adventure material is eminently playable and usable by Palladium fans. So that's one of the things that has surprised me is how willing a lot of them are now to come in and enjoy, playing in the sandbox with us too. So.
Well,
Great.
Sean, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and talk about Atlantis Rising and reminisce about old Rifts games. It's been super fun. Is there any final remarks from Matt or Sean? No?
I'll just say I really appreciate everybody that's backing our projects and the amount of loyalty and love they've shown us. Pinnacle, like Palladium, Pinnacle is a small family-run business, and even though I'm not related to any of the other Pinnacle folks or anything like that, or anybody at Palladium, but that's what it really feels like, and it's really positive experience to be working with such a great group of people, and also to be experiencing this with the fans as a fan, to be experiencing it with the fans. I can't thank y'all enough, because you allow us to keep putting out cool stuff and having more games. And the favorite thing I hear is when people say, we haven't played Rifts in 20 years because everyone's schedules got so busy, but now with the virtual tabletop support and with and the Savage Worlds rules are so quick and easy to use, we're playing again. And to me, that's the ultimate thing to hear as a writer and a designer of a property like this, right? Is being involved with this is just to hear people are gaming again that weren't able to game for whatever reason. So that's my favorite thing. I just want to put that out there. I appreciate everybody sharing that with us.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on with us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. Let me know.
All right, that wraps up this installment of Between Two GMs. Thanks to Sean for joining us today, and folks, get out there and support Atlantis Rising. I can't wait to play it at our table. Thank you.
Thank you.